the tip or a portion of a branch and encourage bushiness. Thinning cuts remove the branch at the point of origin, and it thins out the plants. So when you cut a small branch, try to do it at 45-degree angle to a new bud, but pointed away from the bud. And when we cut a big branch, use the 3-step cut. First undercut to keep the branch weight from peeling and damaging the rest of the tree. And then cut to preserve the branch collar. And here is the photo showing the branch collar. Okay? So I'm going to walk you through this. This is called branch bark ridge. This line here is the result of the branch growing against the trunk and the bark of these two parts pushing against each other. You can see that in a lot of the trees. Some are more pronounced than others. When you get home, take a look. You go away from the branch bark ridge toward the limb. And the branch collar in this photo is very visible. It's a slightly swollen area. See how it's raised compared to the flat area on the branch. Branch collar is where the anti-rotting elements are. It's important for the plant's defense. When you remove the branch, always keep the branch collar. So to make it easy, a flush cut would be here, and that's the no line. Those of us who've taken this class will know when you remove a branch, you do not make a flush cut. Instead, you will cut outside of the branch collar the yes line, right? And when you cut in the right place, watch over time. You will see the wound seals, the bark closes up, and it will look beautiful. When it's cut in the wrong spot, it will look like an ugly scar. And sometimes, when it's worse come worse, it will never heal, well, it will never seal. It doesn't really heal itself. It will never seal, it will become infected, and it can infect back into the stem and affect the health of the tree. So now let's talk about pruning ornamental tree. There are a few things we want to achieve in an ornamental tree. We want to have a proper branching pattern, both for look and for health. And the proper branching pattern should have strong attachment. Remember in the last class we talked about looking at the angle of a branch coming into the trunk and measure or estimate the angle of attachment. And we want to go for 45 to 60 as a rule. There are always exceptions to the rule, but that is the strongest attachment. And in addition, the best measure of a well-pruned ornamental tree, in the middle of summer, you go out, lie down on the ground under the tree, you should have dappled sunlight on your face. If it's too dark and there is no slivers of sunlight shining through, what does that mean? A portion of the tree's canopy has no access to sunlight. And how do plants grow without sunlight? Not too well. That's how we get dead centers, leaves turn brown, fall down, get sick. Okay? So that's our goal. So now let's look at some general rules that we want to follow. We want to have 360, the branches, if we're looking down at the tree, radiating from the trunk, all the way around. We also want to have minimum distance between the branch attachment on the trunk. Too close, too much competition lead to unhealthy development. So here's an example. Look at this Japanese maple. Doesn't look bad, does it? I bet if I lie down under this tree, I'll see some dappled sunlight. It's not too full, has a pretty good form, so it's probably not a candidate to need major surgery. But if I'm nitpicky and I want to do a few things to slightly improve it, what might I do? First of all, there are some weak branches down below here. You see them? Well, portions of trees down below, just by nature of their position, will not get that much access to sun. Depending on the watering system, there's probably more splashes, subject to more foliage, disease, etc. So it's always a judgment call on how much we want to thin up or limb up a tree, and how much foliage skirt do we want down below. I might remove some of the weaker ones by using thinning cuts. Cut it to the point of attachment to the stem, just to clean it up a little bit. I don't like, personally, all these very long limbs. Maples tend to do this late summer. They just grow these long shoots for many, many feet out. It looks untidy. I don't like that. So I'm going to cut it back to a healthy node and keep my foliage develop a little more fuller here and not have them drag so far out toward the ground. So that will be a heady cut. All right? But otherwise, I would not do too much to this tree. So the same principles of spacing of major branches, the 360-degree orientation, apply to a weeping form of a tree. This is a weeping Japanese maple, and it's at the Japanese garden, so it's being pruned by the masters. And as we all know, in the weeping form, what is the standard for beauty is the nature of how branches twist and turn. So in this instance, anything that's a straight line, no good. All right? So wherever you have a pear, anything that's crossing, growing toward the inside that you want to remove, and you have a choice, always remove what goes straight and keep the ones that turn at an angle. And that's how you get this twisty, interesting pattern. So now let's look at fruit trees. That's a challenging topic because there are so many types, and each one has little nuances to it. But let's just talk some general principles. So earlier you've seen this picture, lots of wheat water sprouts that developed last year from very severe pruning, but a good framework, good angles for attaching fruit-bearing branches and spurs, and a relatively open center. So what we did with this tree, first remove dead disease damaged using thinning cuts because our starting point is so congested. Secondly, we took out everything that's crossing. If a pair are crossing each other, we remove the weaker one or both, since we're removing about half of these small new growth from last season. Remember, the worst thing about over-pruning a fruit tree is you don't get a whole lot of fruit this year, but what you do get will be better quality, bigger, better access to the sun, so tastier. So it's not so bad, right? So let's go on to more details. In the home garden, one of the purpose of pruning a fruit tree is to keep it in size. Ideally, we want them to be no taller than 10 feet or even 8 feet. I don't want to get on the ladder to pick my persimmons, so I want the tree to get no higher than where I can reach it with my hand. How do we do that? Well, we most likely will not have a tree that has the open leader, the tall main stem going up and up and up. Instead, we're going to remove the open leader and end up with something that is multi-trunk called open center. Okay, but if your tree is too tall, and in this example, you can simply use thinning cuts to remove this branch, the stuff that's growing practically vertically. What happens, these branches will continue to bear fruit, and they will slowly fill in the open space here, but not probably the same height. So you are lowering your fruit tree by using thinning cuts of these vertical branches that are primarily gaining height. if your fruiting branch is too full and loaded with fruits, one of the dangers is the weight will simply break the branch, right? So here's an example of how you can use thinning cuts to selectively remove and thin out the branch tips. See how that's done? So I would say what's removed here is maybe about half. See the shade, the light shade is maybe roughly half of the dark. And that is about the rule of how much fruiting potential to remove. So I want to show you simple steps to train by pruning a young tree. The principles shown here can be applied to your mature tree. It just takes a little more time. It's not as neat. Okay? So most likely when you go buy a tree from the nursery, it's a long width and it's got a bunch of side branches like this. We know, because we've taken the pruning class, the distance between the attachment of the branches for our conventional fruit tree is important. We want it to be properly spaced, not all coming out from the same point, for stronger attachment and less competition. All right? So we know what the end result we want looks like. And then we come back and look at this little width. And we want to find 3 good stems. Frankly, all the stems look similar when you buy a little bearing with, little whip like this. And so what's good? Distance between the point of attachment on the trunk, right? And in addition, we want a leader, because when the tree is young, we want it to have a center to focus the growth and keep it pushing to gain the height we want before we make an open center cut off the top. This is the tree we have. This is the tree when we plant it. So we plant it. We select the leader that will continue to grow up and gain height. And we select 2 branches out of all of these possibilities. And they're selected based on not too close to the ground, because anything that is 3 feet or below, the branch will simply get so close to the ground, it's not going to be productive. We won't keep it. And the distance between the branches need to be optimal. So let's say that we're shooting for a foot of distance. We had seen earlier minimum of 8 inches. So we end up with these 2 branches. They're going opposite direction, so that's good. Remember the 360 rule? And in the first year, we want the leader to keep growing up, so we're not touching it. But we want the side branches to branch out and fill out. So what do? Remove the tip with a heading cut. And if we can find buds on the branch, we just cut to an outward facing bud. But not too much, just tip it. And what happens in response to the heading cut next year? Branches, just the way we want it. And our leader continues to grow, and we'll see some additional side branches develop. Again, using the judgment of what's the distance between the branches, we'll select the ones that we want to keep. And that's going to become the main framework for our fruit tree. Everything else that we don't want to keep, take it off with a thinning cut. So you don't have to worry about it again. Everything we keep, make a small heading cut. So this year, we keep numbers 3 and 4. We make a small heading cut on both of them to encourage branching, bushiness. Allow 4 years for the training process. And eventually, we'll get a tree, ideally like that. And when this tree gets too tall and we say, don't want to get on a ladder, we can remove the central leader by making a thinning cut right here. See? That will shorten the height and open up the center. Now, this is convenient because it's an illustration. We can draw however we want. But the real tree doesn't grow that way, right? So let's say we have a branch. Let's say number 4. It's just the perfect location on the trunk. Look at the perfect distance here. It's nice spacing. But it's pointed the wrong way. It's pointed the same direction as this lower branch. And what is it going to do? It's going to shade out that lower branch because it's right on top of it. So I want to keep number 4, but I don't like the way it's pointed. What can I do? Grab the branch tip, somewhere around here, tie it to a string, drive a stake into the ground, the direction I want the branch to point, tie the other end of the string to the stake. Okay, watch out for the angle so it's not too wide, etc. All the things we care about. Keep that for a year, and it would have redirected itself. That's the beauty of young trees and the process of training. So training and pruning need to go hand in hand to give the result we want. So, begin young, and as a rule, end of winter, after the risk of frost is done, is a good time to prune because you can see the structure. And in addition, remember pruning will cause the plant to respond by growing. So if we prune in the middle of winter, when we can still get ice, snow, freezing temperature, the pruning encourages the plant to start sprouting out, and those new growths could be killed when cold weather comes. That's why you want to wait until it's going to be warm enough. And for fruit trees, always prune before full bloom. And finally, the exception is cherries because they're prone to all kinds of diseases. So prune them in the middle of summer when it's dry. And you need to remember the age of fruiting wood because pruning is a way to rejuvenate the tree. The trunk may be 20 years old or 50 years old, but hey, these fruiting branches, they gotta stay young to be productive. They have to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. And pruning is the way to achieve that. So I think this information is in your handout. So just keep that in mind as you continue to rejuvenate your tree. So let's just do a quick review. With fruit trees, young trees prune lightly. Remember that we're doing pruning and training. And we use heading cuts. We're building a framework. And we're using heading cuts to encourage branching in the branches we want to keep to form the framework. And mature trees, remember the 50% is probably not too much. Okay? So don't be afraid to prune heavily. And remember the trick of removing the central leader to shorten the height and open up the center. And the top of the tree, because it has better access to sunlight, will always grow more vigorously than the lower portion. So as a rule, the top is always going to take more serious, heavily pruned than the middle and the lower part. Okay, so remember when we prune, we should begin with the top and then move down, because that's where the most work needs to be done. And remember the trick of bending to shape the angle of young branches, and we want to go from 45 to 60. So isn't this beautiful? I just thought it's so lovely, I just want to show it to you, but I'm not really encouraging you to do this. So let's go on to all sorts of other things in the remaining 5 minutes. Ornamental shrubs. See, after trees, shrubs are easy, right? So we have a lot of shrubs that grow like this. Many, many stems coming from the ground, and in the middle of winter, when there are no leaves, they just look like a big mess. It's all tangled up. Okay, remember the simple rules? Cut low first, go to the ground level, look at the branches coming up, pick out the oldest ones, begin removing them, You can remove up to 1/3 of those branches from the ground level, then step back and take a look and see if it's open and airy enough. Many of these shrubs have a little problem of sending out long whips at the end of summer. So if you like your shrub to be tidier, kind of a general uniform shape instead of having all these little weird whips sticking out, grab the whip, follow it all the way to the point of origin in the center of the plant. Make a thinning cut. There. That's gone, and that's how you shape your plant. Flowering shrubs. The trick to flowering shrubs, if you don't want to lose flowers, is to prune after flowering. Okay, so for the shrubs that are blooming, beginning now into May, the spring blooming shrubs, cut them back right after blooming. Then you will have good flowers next year because the flower buds develop this summer. However, those shrubs that bloom in the summer into fall, you will prune them after. But, here's the but. If we prune late in the summer, we'll get nice fleshy new growth, and cold weather comes, and they are the most vulnerable and the first to die. So as a rule, we wait until next spring to prune them. So your summer blooming shrubs, you prune them right now as growth begins, and they will bloom beautifully. Roses, we already talked about that, right? Same thing. Low cuts, up to 1/3 of the oldest canes, remove the crossing branches, anything that damaged disease, and then just cut the remaining branches you want to save to an outward facing bud, 45 degrees to keep moisture away. We're done. Okay, hydrangea. Lots of trepidation about hydrangea. People always are worried about, am I pruning the right time? Enough, not enough? How do I prune and still get flowers? Well, the problem with hydrangea is some of them bloom on the wood that developed this year, new growth. And some of them will only bloom on the branches that developed last year, old wood. So they make it confusing for us. You're not alone. So the trick is you have to know what kind of hydrangea you have. And you have to know the species of the hydrangea. Okay, so save those darn plant tags just for this purpose. And if you don't have your plant tag anymore, take a picture of the flower, send it to a good nursery, chances are they'll be able to identify it for you. Or ask a master gardener. So the arborescens and paniculata are the two species that will bloom on current season wood. Paniculata, this is a quickfire. It's an example. They tend to be upright. The flowers tend to be in a panicle, kind of a cone shape. Okay? And this is Annabelle and also Limelight. They're in this group. So because they bloom on current season wood, we can prune them now in the next couple weeks. The new growth will come out, and then they're going to have flowers in the summer. So how much do you prune? You can prune them as high or low as you want where the flowers to be. Up to you. Okay? The macrophylla and the serrata, those species tend to have the flowers that are usually called mophead or lace cap. Okay. They bloom on old wood from last year. So you want to prune them in the summer after they bloom. If you prune them now, you're probably not going to get flowers this year or not until really late in the season because you would have cut off your flower buds. However, an exception, the nursery trade has been breeding some of these hydrangea that will bloom on new wood and old wood, and the flowers look like this. And in that instance, you can prune whatever you want. So ornamental grasses, that's the end. Some are deciduous and some are evergreen. Deciduous ones, lots of green in the summer, but winter look like this, kind of a wheat color. Wait until you see new growth begin emerging and go cut it off roughly 2 inches above ground where the new growth is coming up. And when there is a large clump, I like to use a rope or a bungee cord, wrap it around, and this is where I would use a hedge trimmer. And just cut it off at 2 inches above ground, and I don't have a mess because it's already bundled up. Perfect, I know. And if it's evergreen, they will just have some dead blades. So with the small ones, I just use my fingers through, like combing through it. And with the nastier things like pampas grass, I would use a rake to clean it out. So people always say, when is the proper time to prune? It's better to say when you don't want to prune, because this is a much shorter list. Don't do it when it's too hot or too cold, because the plant's already under stress, and pruning is a stress. Trees, not at planting time or transplanting. Remember we talked about planting? It's like hardly any pruning, just a little tipping off of the branches. Okay? And there is a group of trees that are bleeders. It's in your handout, I believe. And you don't want to prune them when they're just beginning to grow in the spring, because they just have all this liquid oozing out. Very unsightly. Most experts say it doesn't hurt them, it just looks like a mess, but some experts disagree. So I would just say, leave them alone. Flowering trees and shrubs, don't prune before flowering. So you can go home now and prune your trees, but watch out for the bleeders. They shouldn't be bleeding now, but wait a couple weeks when it warms up, they'll begin to bleed. And your summer blooming shrubs, this is time to prune them now. And finally, you can prune your roses and clean out your ornamental grasses. And I'm going to get kicked out of here, so thank you very much.